Hi, Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and here's another interview in my series of interviews with subscribers. Enjoy. Hi, everybody. It's Stephen here with another episode of the Idiot Quilter Presents. And today I'm presenting someone I'm sure you all have heard of. And if you haven't, where have you been? Really, get your head out of the bag. Oops. That might be a hint as to what we're talking about today. But first of all, let me introduce Myrna. And I hesitate on your name. You know why? The spelling of it. I want to say Myra when I see it. So but it's
actually Myrna.
Myrna. Okay. If I repeat that over 100 times, I'll get it with it. But anyways, this is Myrna.
I can correct you 100 times. It's okay.
Well, it's okay. You can feel free to do it. Everybody else does. So you might as well join the crowd. So Bags by Myrna is the name of your YouTube channel, and we are going to talk about your YouTube channel in a bit, and we're going to also look at some of your beautiful creations, I'm hoping, as well. But first thing I want to know is, where are you located?
I live in Salmon Arm, British Columbia, which is sort of the middle of the lower third of British Columbia, and it's a touristy area.
Okay, well, that's great because I love the opportunity to interview a fellow Canadian as well. I would prefer to do just fellow Canadians, but apparently there's not as many of us out there as there are Americans and people from other places. So I'm really happy about that when it comes to this interview with you. All right, so how long have you been doing what you're doing? And what I mean by that is sewing, I guess, would be the start, because obviously if you make bags and quilts, you must know how to sew. So how long have you been doing this?
Well, I'm very proud of the fact that I turned 60 in June, and I started sewing when I was 12, so 48 years.
Wow, you got into it young. So how did you get started then?
I went to school, and you know how they sign you up for the cooking and the sewing class?
Yes.
And you know Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours?
Mm-hmm.
I'm at about 7 with the cooking and maybe closer to 50,000 with the sewing. I sat down at the machine and I fell in love.
That's great. Well, I guess then if you've got this many more hours with the sewing, it's not maybe a good idea to eat at your place.
I know how to order in like the best of them.
Yeah. Come for the creations, don't come for the food.
Or bring your own, or whatever.
Or whatever, that's okay. So did anyone in your family influence you?
No, not directly. I had some really good influences, though. One was my home economics teacher, not the one that I had in grade 8, but for the next 4 years, I had the same instructor. And she would lock me in the classroom after school and just tell me to sew as long as I wanted to, and then make sure the door was closed when I went home. And she arranged for me to be given a sewing machine when I graduated.
Wow.
And I know. And the sewing machine came from my math instructor's wife, who ended up being the community nurse. So when I had my second child, she was the nurse for my area. And I told my husband, when she calls, tell her I absolutely need to see her. And then when she arrived, I said, the baby's fine. Come see what you did for me.
Yeah, the baby's cute. Come and see my other creations. Yes, that's really a neat story. So with that, so obviously then, did anybody in your family sew?
If they did, it was just like repair type sewing.
Right, not creating.
No one was madly in love and couldn't breathe without fabric.
I see. Well, you know, funny thing is, now I'm going to ask you this because I have a theory about all of this. Did anybody on your grandparents' side of the family sew?
They did handwork.
Right.
I had a grandmother that used to use gingham to make tablecloths with cross stitch, and then put crochet around the edges. Yeah. And on the other side, I had a grandmother who did some crewel work with tapestry yarn and stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But neither of them sewed.
Okay.
They had repair sewing machines, but not.
But right. But doing what they were doing with cross stitch and crewel work and that kind of thing, that is the more the creative bend there. My theory is it skips a generation. because I've
Uh,
heard more quilters say that
oh,
they're,
that's so sad, Stephen,
yeah,
because I keep hoping that my daughter will start to
well,
sew.
I also hear that from other quilters too. They say they're hoping one of their children will pick up the thing, but you know, they don't seem to be as interested for some reason. So I don't know. My theory is it skips a generation. In my family
Okay.
case, my mother didn't do any of this kind of stuff either, so I stumbled upon it by completely by accident. But
Mhm.
anyways, and I'm glad I did. So, what's your favorite creation? And then I want you to show us some of your bags and things. Well, wait, before I do that, let's distinguish between, so you quilt, but right now it seems that you're more into the bag making. Am I correct?
Okay, so like everybody else, the pandemic sort of makes you think about your life.
Yeah.
And I decided that I wanted to start a new business. And I wanted to pick something that would be open ended enough that I wasn't going to be bored out of my mind, but that would be practical enough that it might have some appeal. I've tried textile wall art. So if you think contemporary abstract paintings made out of fabric,
Right.
they're super expensive. There's a small market for that. I've tried textile jewelry and wire weaving and other forms of making jewelry. And again, it's hugely labor intensive. So the market really isn't there. And my thinking with bags was it was this small canvas where I could repeat the size of the canvas, but fill the form in all sorts of different ways. So I deliberately chose bags because of what I knew about myself and what I wanted to accomplish.
Right.
I started with clothing. So when I took that first grade 8 home ec class, I started with clothing and I sewed everything from lingerie to outerwear until my mid 20s when I started having children and went into quilting. And then I made a career out of quilting. So I was there for quite a long time. And that ended about 10 years ago or so when we had the recession and, you know, it just wasn't working.
Right.
So I went back to clothing and I started studying creative clothing and refashioning and upcycling. And I loved that part of it. So I wanted to bring that over to bag making because I wouldn't say I'm a true minimalist, but I am a very simplified person. And
Mm.
so I have quite a minimal wardrobe and tend to like fairly structured silhouettes, Japanese aesthetic. And
Right.
I don't need a lot of clothes. But if I'm not making, I'm going to go crazy.
Yeah.
So bags kind of fit that form.
But it also sounds like you have such a kind of a varied creative career, because you tried a lot of things before you got to the point where you are right now with it, which is good. So it's a little bit more encompassing than all, it's more all encompassing than just one kind of thing. Although you're saying that there are, I know in your videos you're saying that your patterns in that can be used as sort of a foundation to springboard off into other directions, which,
Exactly.
and I find
And
that
that's really
really
important
interesting.
to me that, you know, when you're thinking about what you're going to do at this point in life, you know, I don't really want to make do. Like I don't want to do the things I don't want to do. And
Right.
I have to assume that there's enough people like me that it'll either fly or it won't.
Yeah.
I love the YouTube channel because I get to share no matter what.
Right.
But the bags are at the crossroad between garment construction, quilt making, surface design, and organic creativity that's more process driven.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes your YouTube channel especially very appealing, because it has a wider audience in that way, and it also stimulates, at least for me it does, stimulates, ooh, what if
Oh,
ideas.
good.
It's not a one-off, it's like I could do this, but then I could do this. So I guess what we call it as educators, because I was a school teacher, we call that a transferable skill.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
think that's one of the things that appealed to me about your videos as well. But are you worried at all that your spirit in all of this, your joy from all of this, might be compromised by it becoming a business? Because, you know, it's one thing when we create things out of pure joy for it, but it's another thing when there might be a business model there as well.
Okay, so the long break in the middle was, it's about 10, 12 years that I wasn't working in creativity as a career. And part of that was because I had reached a point of what I refer to as creative prostitution. And I just, it was just like, what other part of my soul could I sell to you,
Yeah.
And so coming back to the bag making, I was very clear with myself that it either works in this form or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, we'll move on to something else.
Right.
It needs to fit that. So I am fascinated by the many ways that you can fill the same form. I'm not at all thrilled if I'm sewing the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah. Mass production. Yeah. It gets
Yeah. So
old
having a
too.
very simplified bag design and saying, here's how you make this simple bag. And then here's these 500 million things that you could do to fill the form means that over time, your hands are moving with ease because you're familiar with how to make this bag. But your mind is going crazy because it goes, what if I paint it? What if I piece it? What if I do it out of thread? What if I cut up a quilt? What if I cut up a goat? What if I, and you just go on and on and on. And there are points at which you're like, what am I doing?
Yes.
The other thing was in terms of getting rid of it. I can't, if it starts to pile up, I really start to stutter because what is the point here of accumulating all these things? It's one of the reasons I like recycling and refashioning because I can take some of those things and cut them up.
Right.
I figured that there would be more of a market for a handbag than a piece of wall art.
Yes, I agree with
So,
you. I can see that. And I
yeah.
also like that I get the idea too, because this has been happening to me lately. I mean, I've only been quilting for about 4.5, 5 years, and I have all kinds of quilts piled up. When I'm done the project, it goes in the pile. I never look at it again, as I'm all about the journey. And
Yes.
I've given some quilts away, but I don't have that many relatives to give them to. And there's people out there, you don't want to give a quilt to, they're not quilt worthy.
No. You only give them to people who truly get it.
That's right. But
Yeah.
so now I'm looking at why I'm going to start making my quilts and donating them to something called Project Linus, which gives
Oh, I know about that. It's
yeah,
fabulous.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I got looking at that pile and it was piling up, and I'm going, it was killing my mojo, my creative mojo, because I'm thinking, why do I want
Exactly.
another quilt?
Exactly.
And so,
Yeah.
but now I have a new life here with it. Now I'm thinking, yeah, but it can be enjoyed by somebody who, needs it. It's going out there into the world to,
Yeah.
you
Well, I am quite a technical dinosaur, and I only learn what I need to know when I need to know it. And so I started Bags by Myrna at the beginning of April, and the amount of learning I've had to do has been, my mind is just So I haven't got to selling the bags online, but my thinking is that as I make these samples for my patterns or for workshops that I want to teach or for the YouTube channel, then those bags become available for sale either online or at the workshops that I teach, or we have this fabulous event on the second weekend in September every year called Art Walk.
Hmm.
Last year I juried into it and I was so stunned that they accept me because it was a very disjointed application.
Right.
So this year I definitely want, in 2023, I definitely want to get juried in, and I hope they do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then that would be another place to take them.
Well, yeah, that sounds like a great opportunity on many different levels, actually.
Yeah. And that was part of my thinking was, how am I going to get rid of this stuff?
But well, now that you've said how it would get rid of this stuff, can you show us some of that stuff?
Well, this is the one I just finished. It will be on next Friday's blog.
That is very chic.
Yes.
Very professional looking. Like, that's when someone says, I make bags, you think, oh yeah, it's a tote or whatever. That is far from a tote.
My children would say something about granny old lady.
Well, I don't think it's old lady, but
No, if about the kind you're thinking about.
oh yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
This one started out as a pair of pants
Oh,
that I made using a pattern by a woman who thinks that we all need 48 inches of ease.
hmm.
So I'm already bottom heavy and I look like a huge person. So I cut up the bag or cut up the pants and I made a blouse out of it. And then I still had some fabric left. So I made a different bag out of it and it was gathered onto wooden dowels at the top. And I thought it looked really quite tacky.
Oh,
So I took that bag apart and I made this one. And that is a very common journey for me. So these, see if I can get closer for you. Can you
yeah.
see them?
Yes, yes, Ken.
They,
The little...
they are hand painted
Oh,
on fabric that was then fused to the background and then stitched for definition and then beaded. And then this is done with one of my favorite tools. It's a pastry blender
a pastry blender.
to put the lines on.
Oh,
A
that's
pastry
interesting.
blender. It just is so cool.
Yeah. So it
Yes.
obviously it must be a type of fabric paint that you use, a fabric paint.
Yes, but also you can just use basic acrylic and add a textile medium to it.
Right.
So this one is made with jelly printing. All of these are seamed together. So there's lots of different seams. And this one was done on a piece of glass using normal acrylic paints from the art store, Liquitex Basics, with some Johanna textile medium added to it. This has been through the washer 3 or 4 times before I made the bag.
Wow.
And it works just fine.
Well, geez, now you're making me want to get into my craft supplies because I have some of those kind of paints and some of that medium, and I've never really done anything that much with it. So, wow.
Yeah, and it's so fun. And you just have to realize you're probably going to make something ugly, and that's okay because that just gives you another opportunity to rescue it.
Yep.
And cut it up and see what happens to it. But it gets very fun.
Yeah, well, I love your philosophy behind that idea because I think a lot of people get stuck in if it doesn't work the first time, that's it, they scrap it, they never return to it. But you know, that's how you learn. It's a process for one thing, and you know, you gotta accept the fact that the first thing you make is not going to be absolutely perfect, but it'll get better.
Well, and if it was, how boring is that?
Well, yeah, you're learning nothing from that, are you? So, oh, this is nice.
This? So this is, let's pick her up. This is a coat.
Wow.
And it is made from, I shouldn't have picked her up.
Yeah, you'll never get her back on the stand.
Okay, it is made from old denim. And this is zipper trim here.
Yeah.
Zipper by the yard. This is, you know the strips that come out of your serger?
Yes.
Okay, so you're sewing along.
Yep.
So I serged a whole bunch of strips and then I macrameed them together.
Oh my goodness.
Make the color.
Wow.
I'll get closer for you.
Oh yeah, I can see that now. The way that, oh, that is really a cool idea. Not something I would have ever thought of.
So then the zipper trim. And then these were remnants left over that I just pieced together like typical patchwork.
Right.
And then on the back here, this spotch here is when I was painting, I forgot that I had put the plastic cover on top of my pressing surface, which is slightly smaller than my work island. And so the paint landed on the side of that and spilled all over the place. And I was like, okay. So it was originally pants plus remnants plus so all of this I did.
But it's absolutely stunning.
It is.
It will go very well with that first bag you showed as well.
Well, that's the weird thing is I never wear it.
No.
Because I wear typically really simple things. And then this is one of my textile jewelry pieces.
Oh, that's beautiful. And so that's actual fabric, but you've stiffened it?
Yes, I sewed all sorts of different tacks in it, and then I stiffened it, and it is on a formed copper
Oh, yeah, okay.
background. And this one has little rivets that are holding it to the copper as well as glue,
Wow.
which was so fun.
Yeah, I'm going to say, so in a sense too, you're really taking recycling to a
Yes.
whole new level too, right? So
When I started doing the creative clothing, I went to a workshop in Oregon with Marcy Tilton and Diane Erickson, who are fairly big names in clothing. And Diane especially was very into organic creativity and refashioning and upcycling. And it was like this whole new world opened up.
yeah,
And
well,
she
yeah.
does a ton of surface design. And I just started doing what you were talking about. What if, how can I? What can I do with this ugly little piece? So I'm working on a bag using scraps of denim.
Oh, that's going to be interesting.
It is. And you're going to ask me later about, well, you might ask me later about groups. So that's part of the
Yes.
group. And
Oh,
then I bought this incredibly ugly fabric.
right.
And my idea is to put fusible web on the back of these flowers and then do thread work and painting on them and attach them to the bag.
Oh, that'd be.
So the whole idea of, gosh, that fabric is ugly. What could I do with it? And
Yeah.
ugly, of course, is in the eye of the beholder, right?
Well, that's true.
The
Yes.
woman cutting it out, I was like, that looks so good with your top.
Well, that's it, actually, you're really inspiring, I think, people to reassess their stash, because we've all got stuff in our stash that we think, why did we buy that? I thought it was a good idea at the time, but you spend a lot of money on this kind of stuff, you need to use it. It can't sit there, it's a waste. So you're really giving people a lot of ideas on how to transform those pieces into something that are going to be a one-off, like they're unique style, they're one of a kind, and they do reflect, I think, people's personalities too when you do that kind of thing, right? Your creative spirit in there. So as a now my question said as a quilter, but you're so much more than a quilter. You do everything. So I'm going to call you as a creator. How would you characterize yourself? And I think I already know the answer to this, but are you traditional? Are you modern? You're freeform, experimental, exploratory? If you had to give yourself a label, which is hard to do, what would you?
Yeah, but I think you can, in that there's different portions of what you do, right?
Right.
So if I'm making jewelry for me, it's going to be big and bold, and that's where we're starting from. But if I'm going to make clothing for me, this is my most common top. I mean, it's just a pretty basic, ordinary one. So other than having it fit really well, there's no technical challenge to it. I can whip it off in an hour and a half. So there, you might say I'm more product oriented because I need some new t-shirts and I'm going to make some.
Yeah.
But when I'm doing something with the textile art area of my life, it's very organic on purpose. So when I was teaching traditional quilt making and I was writing books for that, they were all very pattern oriented. Here's the pattern, here's exactly how you make it, and when you're done, it will look like mine. And I got burnt out and moved into the process part. And I'm so far into process that if I show someone something I made, the first thing they'll ask me is, are you going to keep it or cut it up?
Oh, okay.
because it is not uncommon for me to, like, this coat started with some jeans that didn't work out the way I wanted. So I sewed the jeans. I wasn't wearing them. They were only okay.
Yeah.
So I cut them up and made something else
Yes.
because it's fabric. We paid for it. I'd already done the surface design on it. It was like,
Right.
I don't want to waste that,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to use it. And I'm not giving it to someone who isn't worthy of that creation.
Okay.
So cut it back up.
So I would say that as part of one of your label for this, you are also fearless, because a lot of people, I don't even know if I could do that. I mean, I've looked at a few of the things that I've made and I'm thinking, I don't really like that. Why don't I just cut it up and reinvent it?
Yeah.
But I haven't yet done that. I mean, I think the first cut is the deepest, right? Once you've done it once, you're probably over the whole shock factor and away you go.
Well, and you find that energy. So in 2002, I had reached the creative prostitution phase, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I really needed a break. So I was doing a lot of teaching at the time and still writing products and things. And so I planned 2 years in advance to take a year off. And I called that my year of play. So in September of 2004, when my kids headed off to school, I headed to my studio to begin my year of play. And I had been stocking up for the previous 2 years with all the things that I thought I might like to do. And my only agreement with myself was I had to go to the studio every day. So for the first month, I sat in my curl up chair and looked at my magazines and my books and stared at my design wall and did nothing. And then I went and found an ugly piece of fabric that I had painted, and I did one thing to it. I cut it in half with a rotary cutter. And then I thought, okay, what next? So I did another thing to it. And then I just kept responding step by step like that until the piece said it was finished. And that's how I work now. And I'm not attached to the product.
Right.
I want that energy.
Your process is very reminiscent of what I've heard sculptors go through. They look at the block of marble and the statue emerges from it as they're working on it. And it sounds to me you do similar. You look at the fabric and whatever's going to come out of it emerges as you work with it. So
yes, and you'll make mistakes. You won't like some things that you did. Right. The thing is to believe that you can recover from this somehow.
Right.
Even if you completely covered it up like a painter does, where they paint over the previous painting, at least I'm still not wasting, that portion. So if I had made a quilt and I thought it was horrendous, I might start by doing something like painting over the quilt. I might just put a whitewash over the whole thing.
Right. And then that's your new canvas and away you go with it. Yeah.
Right. And if I get to the end of that one and I still don't like it, well, what if I put a sheer fabric over that?
Yeah. So there's all kinds of possibilities.
Yeah. So instead of, creative prostitution, I'm now being seduced by what if.
What if? Yeah. The what if factor. So you mentioned your studio. So my next question is, describe your work area. Where do you do your creations?
Lovely. So this is my 19th studio.
Oh, wow.
I used to flip houses, so I moved a lot. And this one is in a townhouse. It's the master bedroom. It's 13 by 14. And there is right over here a huge window that is on the second floor and looks straight into the trees. And then below there's a creek. So I have beautiful light, a view of the trees, and the sound of the creek.
Yeah. Very, very conducive to easing you into a creative spirit, I would say.
I'm very influenced by environment.
Yeah.
So in front of me is the closet of the master bedroom, and I don't know what they were thinking, but it's not a walk-in. So I've turned that into my office. And then the brown cabinets you see back here hold all my fabric and supplies. There's 3 of them.
Well, that's it. Well, of course, we all acquire a lot of fabric. Yeah, that looks like a great setup. there too.
Oh, I've been here 2 years now.
Oh yeah. Well, it's
And
time
I
for
and
another
I
move.
have right here. Can you see this?
Yes. Oh yes. Okay. Yeah, that's nice.
So that is a work island that's quite big.
Yes, it is. It's a good size.
It is. So it's 36 inches wide and about 6 feet long.
Well,
And
that's
then
good.
it has drawers and shelves underneath
Yeah, I
for
see that.
storing
So
supplies.
story. So yeah, so you've got,
Yeah, it works really.
yeah, everything's nicely put together, but it's like I don't see any clutter. I don't know if that's the usual for you or not. Or not. We don't need to go into that, but
Well,
but
actually, I like closed storage because if there's too much stuff around, it agitates my brain and I can't think. So I have a couple stages during projects that I will clean up on, and a couple things like if I start to pick stuff up and throw it on the floor, I may as well stop and clean because I'm not going to get anything done.
yeah.
But that doesn't mean that inside the cupboards is super.
And that's why there are doors.
Right, exactly.
And especially solid doors, not doors with glass.
Right.
So that takes me into, well, first let me ask you, so what do you sew on? What kind of sewing machine or machine?
Oh, I was so afraid you were going to ask me this question.
Oh, it's a hard one?
It's just been the weirdest year for machines. So I have had my true loves for a really long time, like longer than my children. And then earlier this year, my serger started clanging and banging and making weird noises. And I took it into the serger shop, and the man called me and very cold-heartedly and bluntly said, "You know it can't be fixed."
Oh.
And I was like, "What? It can't be fixed?" So I bought a new serger. And at the same time, my 1020 Bernina that I've had for 35, 36 years, the tension wasn't working properly. And so I decided in my mind that it was dying, that there was something wrong with the gears. And I took it in to the same person to look at it, and he couldn't seem to fix that part of it. So while I was panicking, I didn't want a computerized machine. I wanted a mechanical one with metal components. And I only want straight stitch, zigzag, and a buttonhole. I don't need anything else. So you can't buy that. They're unicorns.
No. Yeah, I know that.
So first I bought a Janome, and I sewed on it for about half an hour. And that's when I found out sewing machines are non-returnable.
Oh.
So I now had a Janome I didn't want. Not because Janome was a bad name. It just was too basic of a machine after the Bernina. So I ended up giving that to a young lady who really loves to sew but didn't have a machine. My backup machine, I always have a backup iron, a backup sewing machine, and then my regular machine. So my backup machine was a FAF Ambition Essential, which is really computerized. So I brought it out and I started using it, but I didn't like it. So then I went and bought a Burnett 33 and brought it home and thought I had trialed it at the store enough, but apparently not because I don't like it.
Yeah.
So then I decided to take my Bernina to the sewing shop where I used to live, where the mechanic is that I think can do wonders. And they ordered in a Fast Select for me because they figured this was the best mechanical machine. So the idea was, we'll see if the Bernina can be fixed. I'll bring the Select home and see what I think. Maybe if the Bernina can be fixed, I'll bring the Ambition back and you can sell it for me. So I went yesterday and I picked up the Bernina and it was fixed. Oh. And so my Bernina 1020 is now back in its usual spot. I also dropped off the serger and he said, looking at it quite quickly, so we'll see. Of course I can fix that.
Wow.
So I've got one serger and 3 sewing machines because a man told me that my 2 favorite children could not be fixed.
Yeah, that's when you need a second opinion.
Yeah, that's what my kids said. They're like, Mom, maybe you shouldn't panic, So I
Yeah.
phoned my grandson last night and I said, when you come to grandma's house next summer, I have a sewing machine for each of you and we can sew monsters together.
Well, that'll be fun. That'll be nice. So there's a silver lining to all of this.
It makes
So,
me feel less guilty.
yeah. So do you have a favorite tool that you can't live without, that you always have to reach for when you're working?
I would say the machine.
A machine. Yeah.
I like a solid machine and a really good iron.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't care how cheap the iron is. I don't need like a super duper expensive one.
Right.
I need one with a bit of weight, a water reservoir, and lots of steam.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true, because, well, the more expensive the iron, I have found, the more chance that it's going to die on you. So the irons die on a regular basis, I find. So you might as well buy, not maybe the cheapest, but at least one that's affordable, and that, if you get a year, 2 years out of it, you don't mind replacing it at the end. At least that's
yeah,
what
I bought a state-of-the-art expensive one that cost me just under $300 at one time.
Yeah.
And it lasted a year and a half. The one I have right now, it was $29.97, and I've had it for 4 years.
Yeah. So there you go. Right.
Yeah.
So if you had, though, all the money in the world, is there a piece of equipment you would invest in?
Some old Bernina sewing machines. And right behind here is the vaulted ceiling of my living room. So my living room has 18-foot ceilings, 10 downstairs and 8 at the top part.
Right.
I would build a floor over there. I would build a floor over the living room and extend myself.
Oh. Oh, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I could get into that. You can never have too much space when it comes to doing sewing or quilting or anything like that. So you did mention earlier that you did belong to a group. Do you want to elaborate on that? Was it a guild?
Yes,
or
I am not typically a group person. I'm a little eccentric, and I'm not really, I wouldn't say I'm not a team player, but I don't do politics very well. And I'm fairly blunt. So at the beginning, when I was a beginner, quilt guilds worked okay for me, and then kind of in the middle it didn't work. And when that was my career, it was hard to be a professional in a hobby group.
Right.
But I tried some different, looking for creative partners or things like that, and I came up against competition and comparison and that sort of thing. But 2 months ago, I decided to try a group in a community about 45 minutes away from me. And from the minute I walked through the door, they were so incredibly friendly and just welcoming and engaging and interested in what I was doing, and don't really care if I don't do their whatever project they're working on, if I do it my way.
Yeah.
So they were doing this fragment technique that I showed you on the bag.
Yeah.
Using quilting scraps and things like that, and they're making wall hangings. And I was like, well, I don't have any wall space left.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a bag.
But it's nice that you found a group that is encouraging and supportive, because I know what you mean. I belonged to a guild for a couple of years, and I left it because they was just, the politics were there, and I, like you, I'm not interested in the politics of a group. And I also found there was too much competition for things. And I do tend to be a bit of a competitive person, but not on the level that this was like. So yeah. I decided cut my losses, and I haven't belonged to another group since, except basically online. But in that group is I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called the Quilter's Way. It comes out of Calgary is where it's run, with Kim Jameson Hurst. She is the founder of it and the creator of it. And I quite enjoy it. Because the people there are, just willing to share, love to, whatever you want to do, you do, you do you kind of a thing. Yes. And everybody's always, just nice. They're just kind people. So it's a great.
I wonder if some of it's the age. I find at this age, there's less crap.
Yeah. Or you'll put up with less crap, actually. I think that's what it is. I always told people I was going to become a grumpy old man and get a cane. And if anybody got my way, I'd just poke them with the cane and say, out of my way, Sonny. And
you're also dealing with the gender thing. And
yes,
I found that very interesting as an instructor whenever I would have a male student, because I couldn't believe how the tone of the class changed when you dropped one guy in the group.
Yes, I didn't really, I don't like to say that because it sounds a little sexist or whatever, but yes, one of the part of the problems when I entered in this group, there were 100 ladies and me. And it was
I love woodworking. Woodworking is very much like sewing, except you have to be even more accurate.
Yeah.
But you know, when I've gone to some woodworking groups, it's the same thing in reverse.
Yeah.
It's just they're just not used to it yet.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, most of the ladies in the group are very nice, but there was a group of the mean girls, you know, which, you know, you expect that in high school. Yeah, you don't expect them at this age level, but yeah, they exist. Yeah, but that's a story for another day. And this isn't about me. This is about you.
Well, and I think if you know, you're lucky. I had lunch yesterday with a friend that I met when I was 16. We showed up in Sunday school wearing the exact same dress. And I thought, she obviously has good taste.
Yeah.
And so I took my dress back, and we've been friends ever since. And she sews and quilts, and we've gone to all sorts of workshops and classes together, and our lives have gone in radically different directions, and yet we're still such good friends. And when we're together, we can talk all the fabric and all the sewing and all the quilting in the world without anyone's eyes rolling over.
Yeah.
And that's a delight. And you know, having your husband sew is such a fabulous thing, even though you don't do the same thing.
No, but it's sort of a connecting thread.
Yeah.
To, you know, sort of put it in. Yeah, it does. Yeah, he does. He gets me. And I get him. Speaking of threads and things like that, I'm going to segue into, where do you get your supplies? Do you do a lot of online shopping, or do you have lots of places you can go physically?
Well, I live in a very small community. There's 15,000 people. There is a fabric land and a quilt shop and lots of thrift stores, lots of them, really inexpensive thrift stores. So I get my supplies anywhere I can find them. And typically I buy for my stash and I sew from my stash. So when I'm traveling, I'll buy fabric and things as souvenirs. If I go to the thrift store, I'll be checking out the bags because I'll get all that hardware for $2 or $3. I shop the sales. So if I'm at Fabricland and they have zippers on 50% off like they did yesterday, I bought all the black ones, all the navy blue ones, you know, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And then there's a few online sources I go to for things that I can't get near me.
Right.
But I'm finding that I have a fairly carefully curated selection at this point.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you kind of stockpile. That's what I do. I stockpile. What
I find happens is you think you need something.
Yes.
You know, you think that you can't. So this bag here, the black one, I was trying different options for the handles. So one of my videos is about doing these strap tabs.
Yes.
And then I didn't think it was working out because I didn't have the fabric for the handle. So I went and bought this lovely check fabric.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Yes, it is. It is very nice.
But then I didn't like it.
Oh.
So I ended up using these leather ones.
Yeah.
And so that's how my stash gets stocked up, is by the thing I thought would work.
Yeah.
And then it goes into stash and now I have more stuff.
Yep. I do the same thing. I always love the question when I'm in a quilt store and I'm buying fabric. There'll be some other customer lady will come up to me and go, so what are you going to do with that? And I go, I don't know. It's pretty. I had to have it, you know, kind of a thing. And they look at you like, but that's a waste of money. And I go, if I want it, I buy it. I mean,
excuse me?
yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, No.
It's not a need, it's a want. That's what I say
And
to them.
if you can afford it, I
Yeah,
hugely believe in supporting those who support us. I
yeah,
want my fabric land to stay there, so when I need some interfacing and a zipper and some thread, I can pop right down.
yeah,
I will be popping down there after this because
yep,
I need a little bit of some sort of tool, fine tool, to put
yep,
over that denim.
right.
So I wanted to tell you about my most expensive mistake ever.
Do tell, do tell.
When I sew, I have a little jar beside my sewing machine, and I put all the ends of starts and stops of my thread in there.
Hmm.
And so it's amazing because this is about 2 months. And then I make things like this.
Oh, that's pretty.
Yeah, and it's
Like,
all just threads over soluble stabilizer. So when I moved into this house, I put my island parallel to the window. And I've never had something like that where I had strong sunlight on my work island. And what happened is I keep all my thread in jars,
hmm,
canning jars.
right.
And so what happened is I went to start using thread for different projects, and it would do this and just break.
Uh,
So I have 12 of these full of thread that I have to figure out what to do with, and still more to take off the
everything.
spools. So I ordered a book the other day on textile sculptures,
Hmm,
working with metal.
right.
And since I have a lot of copper, I thought that I might be able to do something like that, or some more of this type of thread work I showed you.
Yeah, that
So
would be
that was a 20-year collection of thread
well.
that's mostly in little jars.
You're not the only one that collects it. I have, I don't know if you can see it. I have this little sits next to my embroidery machine. That thread that's in there is just 2 days worth.
For you.
Because it's just when you
Yay.
cut to change colors, right? And I now think I have an idea for it. So
So this
that's
one is made with, so there's a fabric underneath,
right.
and then I put the threads all over, put the soluble stabilizer on top, did all the ziggy zaggy stuff,
Yeah.
and then pouched some yarn in.
And then you
And
just
then this was originally a bag, but I
right.
didn't think it turned out as good as I wanted it to, so I'm making it into another one.
So then you just let the dissolve the water soluble stabilizer, and everything's being held down by the stitching you've done all overall
Exactly.
other stuff. Yeah, I get that.
And
Yeah,
if you want it even firmer than that, you can cover it with tulle or with a sheer of some kind.
right.
But that every time that changes the look.
Yeah,
Whereas this one has the most little edges, little furry edges and organicness to it.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's a cool idea. So yeah, don't throw out your thread, people. Make it into something else.
Especially not a 20-year collection.
Yeah, true. So, do you have any sources of information or experts, so to speak, that you turn to when you're trying to look for new things or learn new techniques?
Well, right now, because I'm focused on the bags primarily, all of my work, is exploratory. So a lot of times I don't really want to look at the work of others because I don't want to be influenced by them. So
Mm-hmm.
a couple of my favorite non-fabric artists are Jane Davies, who does abstracts and collages,
Mm.
and those are the similar shapes, but those are paper or painting, and I can do surface design or fabric. Another one is a lady, Jane is in the States. Louise Fletcher out of England has a fabulous newsletter that she puts out every Sunday. Very supportive and encouraging, and she is also and organic creator and really pushing her boundaries and trying things. Elizabeth St. Hilaire does paper paintings. And again, paper and fabric are basically the same thing. In terms of textiles, I really enjoy Lisa Call. She does a lot of series work and a lot of very intense and simple quilting. So lots and lots and lots of straight lines. And then with the bag making, I've been watching a lot of leather bag making channels. And also, I don't know what else to call them, but English second language bag makers, where they're not speaking at all. And they can show this whole thing in like 15 minutes. And they're so efficient and organized and yeah.
So lots of inspiration.
Yeah, kind of what I'm focusing on right now.
Yeah. And I like your attitude towards the fact that you don't want to, you want the inspiration, but you don't want to copy.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And that's what a lot of people do. They want, you know, I've heard it in the ladies that work at my local quilt store. Someone will come in, see one of the sample quilts for a class and say, I want to make that one. And can you help me pick out the fabric for it? Because I want exactly the same fabric. And
when I was writing and teaching traditional quilt making, that was a really important factor because that was part of how the shops and the suppliers sold things.
Yes,
you know, so
yes.
you had to. That taught me to work in a wider range of colors beyond my own. And typically, the color you need to make this pop is on the other side of the color wheel in the section you don't like.
Yep.
Because that's where the complementary is.
Yeah, that's right.
So if you can go over there, and pull that in, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, true. So do you have any challenges or goals for future in terms of projects you want to do?
Other than rescuing my jars of thread?
Yeah.
Yes, I am really working on surface design. It's something I've tried and then quit and then tried and then quit and then tried and then quit. So obviously there's something there for me. So now I'm trying to really dig in and do it. And I find that I'm nowhere near producing what I want to. I want things that are a little more abstracted, a little bit more like contemporary painting. And I feel like I'm producing hotel quilts that are uniform all over, you know? So let me grab another one for you.
Yeah.
This was last week's video on my channel. And this is fairly bland, right? It doesn't, I can make it pop, but it's not where I originally wanted to go. Whereas something more along this line
has
a bit more energy to it. You don't have to work quite as hard.
Yeah.
So I'm working my way over there slowly and stutteringly.
Well, it does take time, doesn't it? So, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day, as they say. So neither is surface design.
And with my channel or with my teaching, you know, I think it's quite helpful to have a teacher who is also struggling, you know, who has something they're reaching for, but they're just not there yet, but they keep going.
Well, it makes it real. It makes it real. And so let's talk about your channel as well, your YouTube channel. So you said that you started in about April. So you haven't really
started the business in April. I think my first video might have been in June.
Oh, okay. So why'd you start the channel?
Well, I started it as a form of advertising.
Right.
You know, to get my name out there because I wanted to produce patterns and teach again.
Yeah.
I haven't taught for about 10 years and I love teaching it. I blogged but I've had a variety of different blogs. So, you know, I was probably in the late 90s had started to blog. And this seemed like the updated version of that would allow me to have a bit more interaction with the viewers and a little more back and forth and just the new way of doing things.
Yeah.
But I will tell just about anybody, just about anything until they start to dig.
Right.
And so this is sort of like Myrna gets to talk a lot, you know, and if they don't want to hear me, they can just go away. Yeah.
Yeah, they
So
can
I started it
turn
for
there.
that reason. And then yeah. Is it working for you? Because it said unstable right there.
Yeah,
The
you're
other
still
thing is,
working.
okay, good. As part of my retirement plan, I wanted to do a bit more traveling, and I thought if I could combine that with teaching, that could be an interesting thing.
Yeah, that would be fun, actually, I would think. With
Yeah,
that.
so for have people to know I existed, I thought I should have a channel.
Yeah.
And then again, you know, obviously I started a business because I wanted to be successful financially, but there's absolutely no guarantee.
No, true.
And the last time I had built my work up until I had my textile art in 7 different galleries around BC and some really big galleries. I'd had 2 solo exhibits, and then the recession happened.
Mm,
And when people were thinking food or fabric, they chose food,
food.
you
Stupid
know,
people.
so the nerve.
Yeah, really.
There's no guarantee that this will be financially successful, but holistically, I can make it be successful on so many different levels.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Doing the kind of creativity I enjoy, and sharing. So in the end, if it doesn't end up being, you know, all that I hope for, it will still have been something wonderful.
yeah, I think so. And I think that's a very healthy attitude that you have towards that as well, because yeah, YouTube gets out to a lot of people, but you know, it's still, it's hit and miss. You know, you never know. You know, you get those ones that get millions of subscribers for some reason, and then you get other ones that have a handful, but yet the content in both of them is equal. So
Yeah.
haven't
Well, and I
figured
think
that out yet.
having positioned myself at that intersection I mentioned earlier, the hope was that that would attract more people who love the style of creativity I love. Because if I was looking for them just in clothing or just in quilting, the audience would be quite small.
Oh yeah, yeah, I think so.
Whereas this allows me to draw
Yeah,
that niche from each group and maybe create a combined bigger group.
yeah.
But it's just so I love teaching. I love sharing. I like seeing the aha go on for other people.
Well, yeah, I can see that when I
Just
watch your videos, that is projected from your personality and the
oh
way
good.
you do your videos. So again, another reason why I was attracted to it. I mean, initially I knew nothing of you. I just a name, and then I did the exploring and I went, oh yes, yes, I want to interview this person. And also my goal for interviewing people on here too is to help them with their exposure, because I think anybody that I interview, I feel is worthy of exposure. More people need to see them. I just don't do interviews for the sake of an interview. So,
And I think that's such a key aspect. I can't remember. I journal every day, and I have for about 30 years. And usually, I'm reading some sort of daily reading, and then something that's self-help, spiritual growth, and then something artistic. And I read a little bit, and I respond to it in my journal. And I remember one time it was, you know, if you ask somebody for something and they say yes, you'll be that much further ahead. But if you ask them for something and they say no, you'll still be exactly where you were.
yeah,
So why not ask? And generally speaking, you know, people who have the attitude of helping others are successful. Not always, there's some that aren't,
yeah,
but they're willing to reach down and help someone. And I think they believe that that person will then reach down and help someone.
yeah,
And if we all help each other be successful,
yeah. It would be great with it. And
it
I
would be
think
great.
I think that's a really positive philosophy that more people should share in. I think that would be a good idea. So before I end the interview, and this has been just a wonderful interview, believe me, do you have any advice for anyone who might want to get started in your form of art?
So I'm going to interpret that as organic creativity.
Okay.
Okay. And there's no reason not to start. We're not talking world peace here.
Right.
It's a piece of fabric. If you do something and it doesn't work, you do something else to it. But the difference is how you will see the world. You'll start to see potential in every area of your life, and your stress levels will come down, and your anxiety will come down, and your confidence will go up.
Right.
Just by not being attached to the end result, by doing.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I never have trouble starting. I sometimes do. But generally speaking, just do something. If you do something, you'll learn from it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Just start something and you'll learn from it, because I think too many people second guess themselves, go super critical, and they never get anything done. And I mean, nothing, my philosophy has always been this: nothing ventured, nothing gained. So, you know, and what's the worst thing that could happen? It didn't work. So what? You know, move on and go to the next thing.
One of the pieces of advice I got from a mentor that I was working with was to try for as long as I am able to not know what I'm making.
Right. Okay, that's a good, there's a lot of levels in that.
There is.
Yeah.
Like, I know I'm making a bag at this point because I'm really kind of focused on that, but I don't determine in advance, you know, exactly what the exterior will look like, or exactly what the hand, I don't have a clue. I don't know if I will think I'm adding those peachy flowers to that bag, but I'll end up putting on purple leaves. And if I put on purple leaves instead of peachy flowers, it might change the zipper color I choose. So
Right.
I just try to only be on the step I'm on. And I look at it and it's like, what do I think of that? I think it's the ugliest thing I've ever made. Okay, what am I going to do about that?
And I think you just defined what you meant by organic creativity.
Yes.
That's exactly it as well. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. I have found it really interesting. I have found it inspirational. You've given me some ideas about thread too, amongst a whole lot of others. And I'm sure other people, once they see this interview, will also be inspired. And I think you're going to see a lot of more people coming to your YouTube channel as well because of that. So, and that would make me very happy if they did. So I'm going to thank you.
I'm so grateful to be invited, and it's always fun to talk sewing and creativity with someone.
It is. I enjoy it.
I really appreciate you taking the time to invite me.
Well, I appreciate you. So for coming and agreeing to it, because I have asked other people and I have been, well, I've gotten the word no. So for whatever reason, so, you know, you never know, but like I said, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I'm going to sign off with you, but stay here on the line once I finish the recording up. But thank you once again. I'm going to put your links for your YouTube channel in my show notes below. And if you have any other social media links as well that you would like me to include with that, if you just drop me a line, an email with them in it, I will be sure to include those as well. So
okay, thank you.
Keep creating. I'm looking forward to seeing more of your videos as you produce them. And thank you.
Thank you.